Welcome back. This is Lecture 8. Lecture 8, what we are going to talk about is I will help you to understand the nature of the thoughts. And also, I'm going to help you to understand the space between the thoughts. Okay, this is extremely very important because now you're sitting there watching this program and you're listening. Basically, there's a lot of thinking is going on in your brain. There is almost billions cells in your brain. Basically, what they do basically is that their nature is connections, and that connection creates thoughts. Okay, last lecture, lecture 7, we talk about the difference between the consciousness and sex energy. And the difference is only duration. The gap. Sex energy, the gap is very small. That means fraction of a second experience orgasm. And when you experience that orgasm, totally you lose your ego. Now you are one with your consciousness. That's why you have no control whatsoever when you're having orgasm. But on the other hand, when you are intentionally meditating and watching your thoughts, basically one day after meditating for a long time, watching your thoughts, one day what happens is that your thoughts stops. Not you stopping, but you withdrawing energy from the thoughts, automatically it will stop. So in that moment, there's a gap. And that gap is an extraordinary gap. That means you are really now, you experience extremely orgasm. That means that you are literally letting your consciousness experience itself. And that's the explosion, and that's when you feel you lose your ego, and now you no longer, there's no thoughts happening in your mind, your brain, and then you experience this extraordinary experience. But that's what they call enlightenment or mindfulness, or they call the higher consciousness, whatever, because the language, it has all kind of terms and terminology, but I call energy. And you will be experiencing extremely love energy, compassion energy. This is your first time you will say yourself, thanks. Is an extraordinary gratitude, because this experience will change your life, the course of your life. Now you're seeing things in different perspective. You become like me, talking about these things all the time. So this is my passion, because when I talk about it, because I was born to this is my calling. I know these things in and out, because I've been meditating for many years, trying to experience that gap. And naturally that happened because of my background, not having that much cultural things. I didn't have that cultural training. I haven't been exposed about religion or culture things, all these things. Always I have an open mind, and I was a very open person. But when you living in a very complex society, where is a really rigid society, what I call, and then you have been exposed and influenced all these things. You have too many ideological system or belief system in your mind, and that really is kind of a dust. That really is hard for you to experience the consciousness. But now, Lecture 8, let me explain to you about Lecture 8. Lecture 8 is about the space between the thoughts. Okay, now, how your thoughts works. I mean, you're living, you're doing all kind of stuff, but have you ever sit down and watch your thoughts and see what these things is? You know, the thoughts basically is just a cultural thing. It's a belief system. It's a language. So it's just a memory. What happens is that always there's your thoughts is a process. Is moving linear. That means it's moving horizontal. That means you are thinking in the past or you're thinking in the future. Always there's a current of thoughts going through your brain. There's billions of connections of cells in your brain, which causes this extraordinary thoughts that's happening in your brain. So it's a process. So this process, what's happening is that all day long, and even at night when you sleep, always this process of thought in horizontal is moving your brain. Thought, and then you will have another thought, and you have another thought, and you have another thought, and you have another thought. That's what you have been doing all your life. This is an association of thoughts. For example, someone will say something, will remind you something else, will remind you something else, and you go through all these things all day long. But what is creating these thoughts? There's an energy behind these thoughts, and that's your consciousness. So what's happening is that all these thoughts is moving your brain. It covers up your consciousness. You will never experience about your consciousness because all the time you're using your consciousness, your energy, with all this nonsense thoughts. You're worrying about all kind of things. You're contemplating about future. You're thinking about past, what happened. And really, this is really extremely difficult because your brain, the only things it does is that creating these thoughts. And all day long, all your life perhaps, you have been doing all these things, but never stops. This thoughts never stops because one thought leads to another one. Desire leads to another desire, leads to another desire. Eventually you die without even experience about consciousness. This is one of the agony of life because not knowing the meaning of life, not experience the consciousness, is just a waste of life. Just imagine you become aware about this consciousness, this explosion of orgasm. Then you will reflect back and you will say, my goodness, what I have been doing all my life. In fact, I have wasted all my energy just thinking, because the only thing that you're doing is just thinking, because that's the nature of our culture, our society. Society has been exposed this ideological system, which is what they call a structure of a logic structure, and from the Greeks, and then since then Western has taken from that culture, and then it become very mainstream. So people, you cannot sit down and be quiet because all the time you have to be occupied something. You will do something, and that is it's confusing. So the space between the thoughts is when you're thinking one thought and you have a gap, and then you think, then that gap in there, you peak the infinitive sky. This is infinitive consciousness. That's explosion, because your thoughts is a process. You never experience that gap. Once you experience that gap, this meditation, it will enable you to do that. After many years of meditation, it's not going to be easy. It's not overnight things. Many years of meditation, you may peak that gap one time, and believe me, explosion will happen. And this is the first time in your life you know that you have been dreaming all your life. You never live life. So the meaning of life and the treasure is in that gap between your thoughts. But how you can experience that gap. And that's what I'm trying to help you to experience that gap. You see, and it's extremely very difficult.